My name is Lacey Leone McLaughlin. This is Unfolding Leadership, and I'm excited to introduce Linda Tong. Linda runs Cisco's AppDynamics division. Linda leads all aspects of the company, which provides solutions for real-time business platform monitoring, empowering organizations to make better critical decisions in a multi-cloud world. Prior to AppDynamics, Linda was Vice President of Product and Innovation at the NFL. And before that, she was the founding member of both Nextbit and Tapyjoy, the latter of which she grew to 250 employees and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. Early on at Google, Linda was one of the original Android team members and helped launch and shape the Android OS systems. With so many fascinating experiences to draw on, I can't wait to dive in with Linda. Thanks so much for being here today. Yeah, no, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for making the time.
Absolutely.
So to get us started, I would love to hear a little bit about your journey and how you ended up in your role that you're in today. And actually a little bit more about your role. I know a lot about it, but I'd like to introduce the listeners to it a bit more as well.
I would say I am a person who studied economics in college, thought I would go into some sort of financial services career path, and immediately realized that I was wrong. And I found myself stumbling into technology at Google, and I quickly fell in love with building great products that touch millions of people. I got to work on Google Chrome and I got to work on Android, and that kicked off my love of just product development. And so throughout my career, I've spent all of my jobs, all of my passions, all of my time focused on building great products to either make people's lives better or to create something that I personally love and enjoy, like football. As that career path evolved, I would say I went from being a pure product person to also falling in love with the idea of being a builder of teams. So as I found my product management skill set, my team building experience coming together, I found myself rising into leadership roles.
When I think about your career, and I've been watching it for a while, so often you have been tasked with transformation or change or building. And often you're in the leadership role behind that transformation, building, change. How does one keep finding themselves in the position of change agent? How do you keep doing that? Why does this keep happening?
I think change is something that makes people really uncomfortable. Uncertainty of knowing what's going to happen. What does this do? What does this mean for each and every one of us? And that's something that I actually gravitate towards. I love the idea of change. I love the idea of figuring out what's going to happen, what's next. And more importantly, I thrive in moments of uncertainty. I keep finding myself in these unique positions at companies where when you see chaos ahead or when you see change ahead, where many people shy away, I lean in and run full force. When I see these opportunities, those are the ones that excite me the most. So I think I'm a little bit of a magnet for change.
You're excited about change. You're there to lead it. It motivates the heck out of you. How do you bring a team along?
A lot of it is being able to paint a picture of where we might go. And if you can't paint a picture of where we could go, it makes it really hard to get people motivated to actually change their behavior and change the motions in which they go through. And for me, a big part of leading these teams is being able to have a vision of where we might land and how we might get there. And when you can start to lay out that path and start to articulate potential opportunities that come with it, I think it can motivate and excite people. And more importantly, I think when people see that journey and they see the impact that they can have along the way in driving that transformation, I think they get really excited about seeing how their work makes a difference. And I think that's the key to leadership. It's about helping people understand how they are a part of the bigger picture and what that directional end goal could look like that can get them really excited. So that during the hardest parts of that journey, you're able to look north and see that North Star and get really excited about where you're going.
It's a great realization. And as a leader, I'm sure it's hugely helpful to understand that your job is to help create the vision, build the team, and move them along to what that vision and success looks like. At what point in your career do you think you understood that that was your role, that was equally as important to putting great products in the world?
It was probably at Tapjoy that I noticed this. I used to think that the way that you drive impact or change was you just go build great products and things will happen. And it was there that I realized that you can go build something great and no one could notice it and you can have zero impact on the world. And as we started to scale the business and we started to bring many people along for that journey, the level of impact we had, the number of people that we touched, the returns for the business that we were able to drive and the opportunity we opened up, magnified and grew exponentially. And it was there that I realized that that kind of impact, it needs to be a combination of one, having a great vision, two, bringing many people along for the ride, and three, being able to identify the opportunities that are right for that sort of disruption. Being a product person, you always want to have just a couple of people. You want to go fast with a few people and stay totally aligned. And it's so easy to keep a small group of people aligned. And so that's what allows you to go fast. And it was in that moment that I realized that you can go fast and you can make decisions and you feel aligned and you can be happy and see quick impact. But to go far, you need to go together and you need to go with a large amount of people and you have to have a bigger vision.
So how do you go from understanding that you're excited about the opportunity to build, create, craft a product, an organization, or go through that transformation to now I've got a vision that's going to inspire the heck out of people and bring them along to this level of success to lead to this transformation? How do you get that vision? How have you done that?
Well, part of it is dreaming big enough. A lot of times we dream for what is tangible. And when you've got a small team, you can set a really clear goal and you know what role each person plays in it. When you suddenly have a large organization that you're looking to inspire, part of it is dreaming big. And then the other part of it is recognizing that it's not about the leader to tell people what it is that they do or how they do it, but rather to dream big enough that everyone can play a role and then trust your leadership and create these structures in place to allow your leadership to cascade down that vision and inspire their organizations to all get as equally excited, but also see the piece that they can play and see an opportunity where they can contribute to that bigger vision and continually lead them forward on that path. That's tough. It's tough to have a big vision. It's tough to be able to bring together a lot of people on that vision and then trust that sort of delegation of responsibility across multiple layers of leadership. But I think that's the key to being able to do this at scale. It's about recognizing that you're leading through influence, because the more that I've gone on this leadership journey, the more I've realized that the things that I do on a day-to-day basis are around leading people. There's a very limited effort that I drive around like my personal specific deliverables. Whereas early on in my career, I was the PM. I wrote the best specs. I was so good at doing my job. I was a key part of the team, and I had a very specific contribution. And it was tangible. I could look at it. I could tell myself at the end of the week if I did it or I didn't. But now it's so ephemeral. It's about how well do I communicate? How well do I inspire? How well do I influence? How clearly do I lay out this vision that people can understand it and grasp it and be able to take action against it?
Yeah. Having the confidence to know that getting work done through others is your job and it's good enough.
And that's so hard to do. That's
so hard. It's so hard. It's so hard. So much easier just to roll up your sleeves and do it yourself, right?
I'm so good at that.
Not sustainable, not healthy, not scalable, but so much easier, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want to go back to your comment about dreaming big. Is there a time in your career when you had the opportunity to dream big and maybe it didn't play out like you wanted, or you missed the mark, or you didn't get all the way there? You have any stories you could share with us around that?
Yeah. Actually, it's sort of like the story of my life. I dream big all the time. My career is littered with many opportunities where I dreamt big and maybe things didn't work out. In Tapyjoy, we had this really big dream of what we wanted to do, what we wanted to create. It was a mobile ad network that I thought could become the largest and most critical ad network across the entire mobile space. And this is back in 2012. So this is early days for mobile. I dreamt big enough. That was absolutely there. My biggest problem was understanding that role of influence and that role of bringing a team together. I completely failed to recognize the importance of everybody at the table. Having grown up as a product and engineering leader in Silicon Valley, you kind of tell yourself, if you build a great product, everything will work itself out. And I kept telling myself all I needed to work on was building a great product and just making sure our product and engineering team was executing on all cylinders, and everything else should just come together. And I failed to recognize the importance of all the other functions at play: marketing, sales, finance, operation, all these teams that were coming together to execute for this company and to make it great. So focused in my own little world that I failed to lean on my partners and bring them into the mix and help shape this vision with them. And I failed to leverage them for their strengths. And that put us in a bad position as a company. I was too short-sighted to see past it. And it ultimately put me in this position where I was just so frustrated because I couldn't understand why we weren't winning and why we weren't successful. And I ultimately left. And it took me multiple years to figure that out and to realize that the key to unlocking that kind of vision and the key to success for the company really relied on this team coming together and being a team, and not me being the best product person or someone else being the best salesperson. It's a combination of dreaming big and bringing the whole team along. I didn't realize that the whole team meant whole team.
So when you talk about bringing the whole team along and recognizing that your expertise was only one part of the equation, now you're leading all of those functional areas for a large organization doing a lot of really amazing things in the middle of a transformation. How do you help instill that learning, those qualities into your functional lead? So what do you do to share that learning, to share that experience that you've crafted and created over your career that now makes you a whole heck of a lot smarter?
Well, part of it is it's about empathy. The reason why I think I didn't bring everybody along was because I really didn't understand the value that they added to the business. And I didn't take the time to understand it. But what I think is really important is being able to communicate with the entire team. What it is that someone does? What is the role they play? Why is it important? Why would the company not be able to function without them? And if you can actually communicate those things, it becomes really easy to understand how we work together and how we lean on each other to get things done. It's very easy for us to get caught in our own little swim lanes where we just focus on what it is that we do, what are our responsibilities, what are the things that I have to deliver. And then you just say, if it's not mine, it's someone else's, but I don't really care whose, and I don't really care what, why it's hard for them or what they need to do to get there. I just expect them to do their job. And so long as we all have this perspective of, running our little fiefdoms and then hoping that everyone shows up at the end of the day and does their part, that's not teamwork. and that's the problem. And, in my current role, I spend a lot of time trying to focus on, one, who owns what, but more importantly, how do we collaborate with each other to get things done? How do we help each other? How do we make each other more successful? And more importantly, continuing to reiterate with everyone on my team that, look, either as a team, we win together or we all fail. There is no, one person succeeds and everybody else fails. Like, it is a success for the whole team or is a failure for the whole team. And so long as we look at the outcome in that perspective, it helps people understand that we actually all have to get there together.
So when you think about some of your aha leadership moments that lead to some of the collaboration, which lead to you understanding and value the diversity of thought around teams, are there any good stories that you could share that could help highlight that for people listening and can maybe save them some of that same pain?
Oh man, there's so many. I mean, I think one of the biggest ones, I had this amazing aha moment when I was at the NFL, but also, many times in my career, the importance of focus. People talk about product managers as people who need to prioritize. They need to tell you what are the top priorities for their team. What's the 1 through N list of things, and what order are they going to do it? A lot of people take prioritization as an effort of, hey, you have a list and you can constantly add to that list. And at any given time, you should have an order of 1 through N on that list. Mm-hmm. The reality of this world is if you have a list and you're constantly adding to it and you're just reprioritizing it, there are a lot of things on that list that you're never going to get to. And either you accept that or you don't. And I think the role of a leader is doing that same thing. It's recognizing that you'll have that 1 through N list, but there are things that you are never going to get to. And so long as you understand that, you can then act with focus, because then you can say, instead of, hey, I'll put it on my list and this is number whatever on my list, you can say, I'm actually probably only going to get to 3 or 4 things on this list. And you're not 1, 2, 3, or 4. So this isn't going to happen. Despite the fact that this is a great idea, good leaders know that you're not just going to say no to bad ideas. You're going to say no to good ideas, because there's always an infinite number of good ideas that are going to present themselves to you. And good leaders know which good ideas to say yes to. And more importantly, how to focus on only the subset of good ideas that they can excel on and that they can drive execution on for their business. And that's really hard. I've always been a person that just had that 1 through N list. And I was like, I'll get to it. And finally, it clicked in my mind where I was like, actually, we're probably never going to get to these things. In my mind, this is 3 years out. So let's not even set that expectation. Let's not have that conversation, because in 3 years, someone will be disappointed because something else that's more important is going to come along. And I started just saying no. And I started saying, and it's not like in a mean way, but I started saying, hey, look, this is a great idea. Thank you. But the things that we're working on are bigger impact and they're better, and we're not going to do this. One, that focus was so critical because it allowed our team to run fast and run hard and only focus on the most important things. Two, it allowed the people who were asking for these ideas, it allowed the people who really wanted to see them come to fruition, get clarity of what was going to happen and what wasn't. So there wasn't this sort of lingering hope that carried on for all this time of, will we do this or will we won't? And then more importantly, it allowed us as a business to just recognize that there are only these big bets that we were making. So we went all in on those. We put more wood behind a couple of arrows. My first year at the NFL, we were redesigning our product, our mobile app. And, someone said, when are you going to have parity with your previous app? When are you going to bring all the features over? And we just cut 75% of them. We just said, we're only going to focus on a subset of these features and we're going to make it really great. Only the things that matter, that are really important to our customers. And then we'll go from there. And people were terrified. But when we launched it, users were infinitely happier. Ratings went up, engagement went up. We realized by not constantly adding more to it and not constantly sort of like chasing down this list, it gave us the freedom to focus on what was important, constantly iterate and innovate because we weren't chasing some list. And for the people who were asking for things, we gave them clarity of what we weren't going to do. It actually resulted in our whole team being a lot happier. That's product management, but like in general, that same approach of focus, I think is so critical for our business.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, though, you did go from having this list, saying, yes, I'll try, to saying no, a whole heck of a lot more. Here's our focus. Here's our priorities. How did people respond to that? So the first time you said no, what did that feel like? What was the reaction you got?
Every time I say no, people are like upset. They immediately want to challenge me on the decision. They want to talk me out of it. But what's great is what happens after that, right? Because anytime you say no to someone, their first reaction is disappointment, right? It doesn't matter. They ask you for anything, you say no, they're going to be disappointed. But what's great is after a little while, they get over it and they'll come back and they'll get on board. And what's different is for people who've experienced that yes, and it never came to fruition, I've seen many of those people come back and be like, I'd rather you give me the no and I know up front than you give me the yes and it never happens. And that's where I found things becoming significantly better because that transparency, our relationships have gotten stronger, the business has gotten better, and our teams feel a lot more comfortable with how they proceed with what they work on and why. So
a lot of learning in your career with a lot of diverse experiences. When you think about yourself 10 years ago and you think about yourself as a leader today, what would you tell your 10 years ago self to save you some of this key learning? What would be your key messages? What would you share?
10 years ago, I was one of those high performing, really great ICs, like, give me some job, I'll do it, I'll work my butt off. And I thought it was great. I thought I was like the creme de la creme. And I thought I deserved anything and everything under the sun. And when someone talked to me, I was like, oh, I'm an expert at this. I'm so great at that. And the reality is I was at the very early stages of like a Dunning-Kruger curve where it's like, you think you're an expert and you have very limited years of experience. And then with years of experience, you start to go down on that self-awareness and you realize, I actually don't know as much as I thought I did. And it takes you so many more years before you start to climb that curve again. And you realize, okay, maybe I'm starting to build expertise. So many years ago, I completely lacked self-awareness of what I knew and what I didn't know. That lack of self-awareness was this blind spot of mine that prevented me from having the curiosity to learn and grow. And I think I missed many opportunities to learn from people around me, to appreciate all the amazing people who are around me with great experience that I could have spent more time with. I wish I had that natural curiosity that frankly was blocked out because of my lack of self-awareness.
How did that self-awareness become something you were aware of?
Part of it was just with experience, as you start to go through motions and go through jobs, you start to run into some issues again and again. And you're like, oh, I've seen this before. And you start to just get better at it. You just start to gain that experience. But the other part of it was I started to find myself surrounded by amazing leaders who had tons of experience. And some of them were kind enough to be open and honest with me and call me out.
Feedback.
Oh yeah. Very, very critical feedback. I had a couple of mentors who had no problem calling me out for my shit. They had no problem telling me where I was full of myself, or maybe I wasn't looking at the whole picture, or perhaps I wasn't approaching a situation the right way. And when you have these people pull you aside in a really safe space and have these open and honest conversations with you, you can either ignore them and, stay in your own mind and allow yourself to be blind to all of this, or you can have a wake up call. And I had a series of wake up calls from really amazing leaders who I bumped into, who took time out of their day to make sure that I got those wake up calls and make sure that I got that honest feedback so that I could grow as a person because they cared that much about me.
It's fascinating. You're talking about conversations that I'm guessing were pretty hard to hear as pivot points in your career and these amazing experiences. I mean, I'm hearing you say, I got tough feedback. They opened my eyes. They told me things that I didn't want to hear, didn't see, didn't know. And boy, that was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So what did they do that made that a positive experience? Because that is not the norm.
Well, I mean, in the moment, those were terrible experiences. I was heartbroken, but they're people that I deeply respected. And, in the moment they would tell me these things. And my first reaction was, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know me. How dare they say this? It took me time. It took me time to, one, truly soak in that feedback. And two, realize that there's no reason why anyone would go out to intentionally hurt me. These people were giving me this feedback because they cared. I've had many conversations with those folks over the years, and I've been able to say, hey, thank you. I know I was not a great listener when you had that conversation with me, but I really appreciate you, taking that moment, having the uncomfortable conversation, potentially putting our friendship on the line if I wasn't going to be mature enough to handle it. And, I deeply appreciated it. And
so you had to get out of your own way to learn and become the you of today. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when you come across technically, functionally brilliant individual contributors now, and maybe you see a little bit of yourself in them, what's the conversation that you have?
I ask them what sort of impact they want to have on the world. And I ask them what motivates them, what makes them wake up every day? What do they want out of life? And sometimes they want to go build a specific product. Sometimes they have a very specific focus area. Maybe they want to solve climate change and they want to build a product that solves it. But some other people, they talk about the impact that they want to have on the people that they touch. They talk about how they want to be remembered. They talk about how they want to create environments where people feel like they belong, and working closely with people they respect and enjoy, because it really matters, who they spend their time with. And you'll hear these different areas of pride and focus. And when I talk to people like that, and I hear people talk more about people and environment and culture and impact, I always encourage those folks to think about leadership opportunities. And when I talk to people who focus on product, I'm just as excited for them. And I ask them, how can I help them? Everybody has different drivers of what makes them who they are. And I think it's really important to understand what's their biggest driver, and then ultimately drive your career in that direction.
So I hear a lot around listening, learning, understanding, self-awareness, being thoughtful. And basically it's that servant leadership model that we've all heard so much about over the years. So with that, what would be your final thoughts to a brand new individual contributor who was just promoted to manage their first team? What would be your words of wisdom?
I would say, as you go to manage this first team, understand what motivates your people and understand how you turn them into a bunch of individuals into a team. And if you can figure out those two things, the things that turn you from individuals into a team, and ultimately what motivates each and every person on that team, it'll be so much easier to get anything done.
You have given our listeners so much to think about. I guarantee you every person that's managing people is going to go away more thoughtful, with more self-awareness, and asking themselves different questions after hearing you today. Thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much, Lacey. It's been awesome.
What I'm left with is understanding the role we each play. What are our drivers? What motivates us? If it's leadership, I encourage you to reflect and think back on Linda's question. How do you turn individuals into a team? This is episode 4 of Unfolding Leadership. Thanks for listening.